What does it mean to be a real man when the world seems determined to define it for you? On the morning of my wedding, the air was thick with the scent of roses and anticipation. The venue, a sprawling garden estate, buzzed with the laughter of guests and the clink of champagne glasses. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie for the 100th time, my heart racing with a cocktail of nerves and joy. Today, I would marry Lily, the woman who had become my anchor, my laughter, my home. Her smile could unravel my darkest doubts, and her touch made me believe I was enough. But as I straightened my cufflinks, a shadow lingered in my Minda's shadow cast by her mother, Margaret, who had never hidden her disdain for me. Margaret was a woman of sharp edges and sharper words. From the moment Lily introduced us, her eyes had sized me up like a butcher appraising a cut of meat, finding me wanting. I was a high school art teacher, not a corporate titan or a rugged outdoorsman. My hands were stained with charcoal, not calloused from manual labor. To Margaret, I was a soft-spoken dreamer, unworthy of her daughter's hand. "Lily deserves a real man," she'd said once, her voice dripping with condescension, as if my quiet strength and devotion were invisible. The ceremony was a blur of vows and tears, Lily's hand trembling in mine as we promised forever. Her dress shimmered under the sunlight, and for a moment the world felt perfect. But perfection, I'd learned, is a fragile thing. At the reception, under a canopy of fairy lights, Margaret took the stage for her toast. The crowd hushed, glasses raised, expecting warmth. Instead, she held up a small gift bag, her smile sharp as a blade. "Lily, darling," she began, her voice carrying over the garden, "I've always wanted the best for you. So, I brought you something special." She reached into the bag and pulled out a baby bottle, its plastic glinting under the lights. A murmur rippled through the guests. "This," she continued, her eyes locking onto mine, "is for when you find a real man to give you the life you deserve." The world tilted. Laughter nervous, confused broke out among some guests, while others gasped. Lily's face drained of color, her hand tightening around mine. I felt the heat of 100 eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. Humiliation burned in my chest, but worse was the pain in Lily's eyes, a mix of shame and fury. I wanted to shout, to defend myself, to tear the bottle from Margaret's hands. But I stood frozen, the weight of her words pinning me in place. Lily stood, her chair scraping against the stone floor. "Mother," she said, her voice low but steady, "you don't get to define what makes a man." The crowd fell silent. She took the bottle from Margaret's hand and placed it gently on the table, her eyes never leaving her mother's. "Ethan is my husband, and he's more real than anyone you've ever known." The guests erupted in applause, but the moment felt hollow. Margaret's smirk didn't waver as she sat down, and I knew this wasn't the end. That night, as Lily and I danced under the stars, she whispered, "I'm so sorry." I held her closer, promising myself I'd prove Margaret wrong not with words, but with the life we'd build together. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of honeymoon bliss and new beginnings. We moved into a small apartment, its walls adorned with my sketches and Lily's photographs. But Margaret's shadow lingered. She called Lily daily, her voice laced with subtle jabs about my unambitious career or our cramped home. I swallowed my pride, focusing on Lily's laughter, on the way she'd hum while cooking dinner. Yet doubt gnawed at me. Was I enough? Could I give her the life Margaret believed she deserved? Then came the twist I never saw coming. One evening, as I graded papers at our kitchen table, Lily answered a knock at the door. Standing there was a man I'd never met, his face weathered but kind, his eyes carrying a quiet sorrow. "I'm Thomas," he said, his voice rough. "Margaret's brother." Lily's jaw tightened. Margaret rarely spoke of her family, and never of a brother. Thomas stepped inside, clutching a worn leather journal. Over coffee, he told us a story that shifted the ground beneath me. Decades ago, he'd been married to a woman Margaret adored, a real man, by her standards a successful lawyer with a commanding presence. But behind closed doors, he'd been cruel, his words cutting deeper than any fist. Margaret had known but dismissed it, blaming Thomas for provoking him. When Thomas left, Margaret cut him off, ashamed of his weakness. She spent her life chasing an idea of strength that doesn't exist, Thomas said, his eyes meeting mine. Don't let her define you, Ethan. You love my niece in a way that man never could. His words hit me like a revelation. Margaret's cruelty wasn't about might, was about her own warped lens, forged by a past she refused to face. I looked at Lily, her eyes brimming with tears, and felt a weight lift. Thomas's story wasn't just a confession. It was a mirror, reflecting the truth I'd been too afraid to see. I wasn't failing Lily by being myself. I was loving her in the only way that mattered wholly, without pretense. That night, Lily and I talked until dawn. She told me about her childhood, how Margaret's relentless expectations had suffocated her, how she'd chosen me because I saw her, not some idealized version of her. We decided to set boundaries with Margaret, limiting her influence in our lives. It wasn't easy. Lily loved her mother, despite everything, but it was necessary. Months later, we hosted a small gathering for our first anniversary. Thomas came, his journal now a gift to Lily, filled with stories of resilience and hope. Margaret was invited but declined, her silence louder than any insult. As we toasted to our future, I felt a quiet triumph. I hadn't become someone else to prove Margaret wrong. I'd become more myself, flaws, dreams, and all. In the years that followed, Lily and I built a life that defied her mother's predictions. I published a series of graphic novels, my art finding a small but loyal audience. Lily's photography business flourished, her work capturing the beauty in everyday moments. We didn't need a mansion or a corner office to feel rich. Our wealth was in late-night talks, in shared laughter, in the way we held each other through life's storms. One day, a package arrived from Margaret. Inside was a letter, her handwriting shaky. I was wrong, it read. I see now what you have. Forgive me. Tucked inside was the baby bottle, now engraved with our initials and the date of our wedding. It wasn't an apology, not fully, but it was a step. Lily kept it on a shelf, a reminder of how far we'd come. What does it mean to be a real man? For me, it's not about proving my worth to others. It's about loving fiercely, standing tall in my truth, and building a life that matters. Margaret's words once cut deep, but they no longer define me. I am Ethan, artist, husband, dreamer, and that is enough.